All right, so one of the things that you need to look out for, and this is a pro tip, guys, is how many locks are in a unit that are cut. So let me show you over here for an example. So right down here, you'll notice that there's 3 locks. So in a lot of storage lockers that you purchase, there will be multiple locks in the corner of the unit. And the reason for that is because the facility has cut the lock multiple times. So the person that was renting basically had multiple delinquencies. So multiple times that the facility had to come out, cut the lock, and then they would end up paying in time before the auction. And then a lot of times they can't pay again. So maybe a month, 2 months down the road, they will then can't pay, and then they'll cut their lock. And so the reason I say look out for multiple locks is because if they cut the lock once, they may have been in the unit already and grab some of the better stuff. And so that's the reason you need to look for multiple locks. It's kind of a pro tip. If you see 3 or 4 that have been cut, you know that they've had access to this unit 3 or 4 times before you've been able to bid on it and it go for the final auction. So always look for multiple locks. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be good stuff in there, but it's a possibility that they have been in the unit, grabbed some good stuff, and so just be aware of that possibly they've had access to it a few times, a few months as they've been delinquent. All right, so another pro tip, guys. So when you're looking in the unit, a live auction, you have your flashlight, and we'll kind of go over that if you haven't already seen what to bring to storage units. But one of the things I look for is if there is any Goodwill stickers, okay? Or Goodwill tags, or Goodwill receipts. So I do not like seeing Goodwill tags. Now, I'm not saying that there's nothing great in the unit if you find Goodwill tags, but remember, I'm a treasure hunter. I want to find stuff that's vintage, old, and I want to find, stuff that people spend a lot of money on and has paid a lot of time to have it being stored. So I do not want to find any Goodwill tags. So what you'll do is, it's very important to scan the unit, because you do get a few seconds, and make sure that you look with your flashlight here. You'll scan it and see if there's any Goodwill tags. Now, if you look over here, you'll notice that there is a Goodwill tag on that tub right there, as an example. I'm not saying not to buy the unit, but that's just another thing that you got to look for when you're buying storage units. Another thing too is, just like Goodwill tags, I also look for garage sale tags. Why do I look for garage sale tags? Because remember, a lot of times they lose the unit because of money, and it's very important to me that I don't want to buy a unit that they try to sell at a garage sale and then just threw in a storage unit, right? So I always look for garage sale tags along with Goodwill tags. Garage sale tags are a good indication that possibly they tried to sell the stuff before they put it in storage, and I don't want to have to buy that stuff if it didn't sell at a garage sale. Remember, I'm a treasure hunter, so that's kind of the idea. So always look for garage sale tags and Goodwill tags. Again, not a 100% way that it's not a guaranteed thing that you don't have to buy those things, those units. But for me, I want to make sure that I don't see any garage sale or Goodwill tags when I buy a storage unit. All right, so this is another thing that I look for when I scan for a unit that I do not like. Remember, these are things that I do not like seeing when I go to a storage unit, okay? One of them is dirty mattresses. Why? Because if people don't take care of their mattresses, then they may not take care of their stuff. There's a big correlation to people that take care of their mattresses. If there's a dirty, kind of grungy mattress, now there's 2 types of dirty. There's the fact that maybe it's been in the unit for years and years and years and it's collected dust, or we all know what a dirty mattress is on the other spectrum, right? So I don't like to see dirty mattresses. That's one thing I look for. If people wrap their mattresses or keep them really nice, that's a great sign, and we'll kind of go over that and things I like seeing, but I do not like seeing dirty mattresses. And another thing is dirty shoes. The reason I say shoes is because you get 2 types of people that take care of their shoes and people that do not take care of their shoes. The idea is, I'm trying to profile the storage unit and figure out before I buy if they cared for their items. A lot of times if they cared for their items, no matter how old or new they are, there may be some good stuff in there. If they didn't care for their items, then that kind of tells me, okay, don't spend a ton of money on this unit, because it's all about managing your money when you're buying storage units. It's very important. Cash flow is very important. So one thing I like to look is there mattresses? Are they clean or are they really nasty? Because if they didn't take care of them, then they may not take care of the rest of their stuff. Same thing with shoes. When you buy storage units, you're gonna find a lot of shoes. Are they all over the place dirty, or are they kind of like in bags or taken care of? Because then at that point, they may care about their items and I may get some good stuff in there. But if they're all over the place and nasty, then they didn't take care of their shoes. And that's one of those things where you can kind of get an idea. You're trying to profile the storage units. So again, two things I look for, and those are two things that really turn me off if I do find them.
What percent of U.S. households currently rent a self-storage unit? Is it A, 7.4%, B, 6.9%, C, 8.9%, or D, 4.1%? The answer is C, 8.9%.
So this is not a guaranteed thing. Remember, this is kind of what I look for, and that's the purpose of this course, is to kind of show you guys my experience, right? So one thing that I look for is I look for fake furniture, IKEA furniture, fake wood furniture. Now, I buy a lot of those units with that type of furniture in there, and I'm not saying that that's 100% deal breaker for me. But when I look at units, as an example, you come over here, you look over here, this is solid wood stuff, right? Now, and then this is solid wood, kind of older furniture over here. So I like to look and see what type of furniture is in there, because ideally the fake stuff is cheap, IKEA stuff is cheap. I want to see how much money they put in their storage unit, kind of like sporting goods. And we'll talk about stuff I like seeing, expendable income, right? That's what sporting goods stuff is. Kind of like that with furniture. Like, people can get the cheap stuff, but if they buy the expensive solid wood furniture, there could be some good stuff in there if they're willing to leave that behind, right? So I always want to see and scan the unit and see, is it fake particle board furniture or is it the real stuff? And that's one thing I love looking for when I scan for a unit and profile it. All right, so here's another thing that I do when I profile storage units, and that is what? Use all your senses, and one of them is smell. That's one of the things we're going to go over later in the course, the difference between a live auction and an online auction. But it's smell. That's one beautiful thing about going to a storage unit in person, is you can smell it. Now, we all know the smells. I don't have to tell you, right? If it smells like these clothes have not been washed for 2 years, it may not be the great unit, a great unit for you, because it shows that they didn't care about their items. They just threw it in bags and bags, or just threw it anywhere and didn't wash it before they put it in here. Another thing is it could smell like something died in there. I have bought 3 or 4 storage units in my time over the years where people leave snakes, turtles, there's pets. It's disgusting. So it happens though, right? And so you've got to understand what type of unit you're dealing with. And then there is the other type of smell where you go in it and you smell like it's just been there for a long time. That's not a bad smell. In fact, I like that, when you see a lot of dust and you feel like the stuff has been there for a very long time. But use all your senses, and one of them is going to be smell. If you smell really nasty stuff in there, again, it's not 100%, but it may point to the fact that they don't care about their items. And keep in mind too, though, that sometimes it's not the person that owns the stuff that actually will pack it into storage units before they leave. It's actually friends and family, and a lot of times friends and family don't care about the stuff as much as the owner would, right? So everything you've got to take in consideration. Some of this stuff actually maybe just friends or family put it in there, right? But 9 times out of 10, if you find some of these things like smell and everything else that we went through in the later of this video, you can kind of pick up on really good units and stuff that you may want to pass on. So always use all your senses, and smell is one of them. All right, so this is one that I never really took in consideration until I've done this for many storage units, is the type of boxes, right? So early on in my career when I bought storage units, I didn't look at the boxes, meaning U-Haul boxes, it could be any kind of boxes, right? Home Depot boxes. But the boxes that you really want to really hone in on is the fast food boxes. You're going to find a lot of those. So I bought some storage units where they worked for Starbucks, or they work for, you know, Taco Bell, or they work for McDonald's. And the reason I do not like to purchase units that have boxes that have, you know, fast food labeled on them, and again, no disrespect for people that work at fast food, I understand, but the idea here is I want to purchase units that actually have good stuff in it, expensive stuff. Not to say that those the people that work for fast food don't have expensive stuff, but again, the likelihood that there's really expensive stuff in a McDonald's box is slim, right? So I always want to look, when I'm looking here, if I see a bunch of fast food boxes, I always stay away, right? Because typically, you know, it's just lower income, and I don't want to buy units like that. So keep that in mind. Really scan these boxes and kind of find, do they show McDonald's, do they show Starbucks, do they show Taco Bell? And it just means that it's kind of a just a lower income storage unit. And those are great because they go cheap, and yes, you can find good stuff in it, but for me, I want to find like really older stuff, good stuff that I can put on eBay and Amazon and Poshmark. And for those, it's very important to me to kind of look at the boxes and profile. So the idea is to profile the storage units, and this will become easier over time. You only get a few seconds to profile the unit, and things will start slowing down as you buy storage units. But really hone in on the actual type of boxes that are in these units, because a lot of times you will come across fast food units, and so you just got to keep that in mind. And we'll kind of go over location and everything else of storage units in other parts of this course. But for now, always look at the boxes and see what they're labeled. All right, so this is one that necessarily you've got to always look out for sometimes, is the fact that we're outdoors. These are outdoor units, right? So I actually prefer buying outdoor units, especially outdoor units, if you look here, that are basically easy drive up access, right? So for example, all these units you see here, a lot of people don't like buying them, but in fact they're the best to buy. Why? Because they cost the most money, because you can drive up to them. So a lot of facilities, you go up elevators, you go up to the top, they're indoor units. Those cost less a lot of times than these ones you see here, because you have to drive up to these units, so they cost more money, right? But with that, this tip here is you've also got to be careful, because I've been to a lot of mom and pop facilities, non-corporate big companies, and a lot of times there is mold growing in here. The outdoor elements get into the storage unit. So one of the tips I have for you when you're buying an outdoor unit, especially one that you drive up to, is really look not just at the merchandise, but also the walls, the ceiling. You want to look at these things to see if there's any issues that may be creeping into the storage unit, whether it be the weather, mold, any kind of outdoor element that may actually affect the merchandise that you're buying, especially if it's got books and different things that really get affected by the weather. So always not just look at the contents, but do a very quick scan of the sides of the walls and the top to make sure. Now, a lot of times when you go to these big corporate companies that we're at today, you'll never find any issues. But sometimes when you go to the smaller privately owned storage facilities, that's where you're going to find these type of issues. And a lot of times too, people rent these for 5, 10, 20 years, and they don't have time to go in there and remodel and revamp them. So you've got to take that in consideration, especially when you're buying old units. So really look in, you know, not just the contents, but also the unit itself, because I've ran into issues where there's water damage and got over a bunch of merchandise. So just keep that in mind.